Hey there. Ritual here to give a big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. The magic of those family moments, that was you. And now there's new milestones to prep for in 2025. This new year, check clean, quality pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list with Ritual. We've done the research to create science-backed pregnancy support like our prenatal multivitamin, natal choline, and fertility support, all designed to be taken alongside each other. But don't just take our word for it. They're also third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals and Clean Label Project certified. So whether you're trying, thinking about trying, or already there, we don't have to tell you that prioritizing yourself can be the hardest part. That's why we're helping you get started today with 30% off a 3-month supply for a limited time at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sack Heads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sack Head Sean and Sack Head Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world,
around
to the best
the world,
late night conservative talk,
right here,
Sack Heads Radio.
Heart, dude. Heart, dude.
Radio.
Heart, dude. Heart, dude.
Radio.
Sack.
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 The best late night
The
conservative
best.
talk show in America.
In America.
Into the silo.
And Nicholas Webb was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That was 2 weeks ago. We had Sackhead's Clint right here on this show tell us that he did, in fact, see a spider as large as a Buick. And it was in a place near the Pacific Ocean when he was on an outing, so to speak, and he showed us a photograph of that live and on the air. That was the show when we were talking about President Kennedy. By the way, welcome to the Sackheads Radio Show. I am Sackheads BZ. Over there is not Sackheads Clint, and behind the mic here is not Sackhead Sean. They're gone. They're vacationing. I'm not even going to make up a crappy excuse. They're just vacationing. All right. Hey, listen, everyone has a right to be on vacation. Do they not? Of course they do. Of course they do. So that's exactly what's happening here. Thankfully, I think with crossed fingers, we may have everything working now here in the studio. What actually happened is there was a this is why it's, if I could focus over there on Clint's chair, and it's not there. I got Clint a shirt that says SHR Media on the top. And then because it's his standard saying around here, it says fucking technology. Well, that's what happened last night on the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. That's my show. And what happened is that the software decided that it was going to update on the laptop. And what it did is when it updated, it derezzed every audio setting that we had worked so hard to get on the damn laptop. So we discovered that, okay, the laptop was affected, and my laptop over here was affected, and the speakers were affected, and the microphone was affected, and the Arrakis board over here was affected. The only thing that damn wasn't affected was the lava lamp right here. Oh, speaking of lava lamp, folks, if you want to listen to the Sackheads Radio Show, you got to do it every night, every Wednesday night on the SHR Media Network. Right now, go to shrmedia.com, quick like a bunny, because I know you're probably already there. So you can watch us, you can listen to us on Spreaker, shrmedia.com, and then if you want to see what's going on all the stuff that's occurring inside the studio, go to the SHR channel on YouTube and then go to SHR Media on Facebook, and you can see us right now, Facebook live and direct from Sacramento, Fornicalia, from the veritable belly of the beast. When I say the veritable belly of the beast, Sacramento, California, which I call Sacramento Fornicalia because California fornicates or fucks over everything around it and certainly well within it. But the belly of the beast, the Capitol building, is no more than about maybe 2.5 miles, 3 miles that way, west. So when I say that we're broadcasting in the midst of loony leftist central, oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. The Sack Heads are broadcasting in loony leftist central, live and direct from the SHR Media Studios. And who knows where they are, because we're certainly not going to tell the Democrats around here. Nothing like that at all. So it appears that I don't hear any complaints, any nasty things going on in chat. And I say hello to Dave. Dave's in chat along with 2 viewers. Jersey Joe had to go away. And with luck and cross fingers, we're going to have Dan Butcher on tonight. It's interesting because I'm going to have my show, standard show, on tomorrow night, and that's going to be a full 2-hour show. This one tonight, I suspect, is going to be about an hour or so, because when Dan calls, we're going to chat about, you might think that it's going to have only anything to do with the Las Vegas shooting. And yes, we're going to talk a great deal about that. But there are lots of things that are linked with that shooting, that are intertwined, and a great deal of it has to do with the reaction and the fallout from the reactions of what occurred in Las Vegas this past Sunday. The situation is such that this is this is really confounding for leftists, terribly confounding for leftists, and perhaps even for some on the right. But more so for leftists, because they can't at this point, although they're doing their best to gin up the ancient white Caucasoid meme, because it's an ancient white Caucasoid that happened to do this. And when Dan calls in, I'm going to have some interesting stuff to say about what I think the motivation behind this is. But it's particularly frustrating to leftists because at this point they cannot take all of their pudgy little fingers and point at one particular thing and say, I knew it. It was that guy. And he's a terrible Trump supporter. He's a GOP guy. And we're going to find out that he's linked to some of the worst Caucasoid terrorist militias in the world. They're going to find out that he learned at the hands and the feet of Tim McVeigh. I'm sure that they would love to hear that, because
if you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If for no other reason than some of the things that were discovered in the truck and around the investigation. So it's not just frustrating for leftists, but it's also frustrating for people on the right. One of the earliest memes that came through was that, was that ISIS was making an initial claim for responsibility. Now, it's interesting to see what people say and what people don't say is every bit as important. If you remember when folks were saying initially, and I think it was the UK Daily Mail, welcome to Mary Brockman. She just jumped into chat. Good to see you. Hey, tell you what, it sounds like Dan Butcher, it says. So let's talk to Dan, shall we? And Dan, fingers, toes, eyes crossed, anything else that I have that can possibly be crossed. Does it work? Do we have you on the air? Oh, please. Don't do this to me again. I just called this darn thing, and it worked for me calling in. I've got the line open. Oh, boy. Okay. Lord. Okay. Tell you what. Yeah. Dave Milner says, yeah, I can't hear Dan. Dan, tell you what. If you can hear me, call back. I'm going to hang up the phone, see if you can call back, and we're going to see if this will work. Oh, my God. 2 days in a row. This can't be true. Lord. No, Dave, I've got the right mixer up, and I've got the right plug in. And what happened is Sean earlier today remoted from his vacation spot, went in and remoted the computer and set everything back up again. Now let's try it again and see if we can hear Dan. Please, Dan, are you there? Are you kidding me? Oh, good Lord. Oh, Lord. Won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? I cannot believe this is happening because I heard when I called in, I tested Skype just before we went on the air. And now I'm sure Dan is calling from the exact same spot he's always called. And I don't hear him. To say that this is frustrating would be just a bit of an understatement. Oh, wait, I heard a click. Okay. Maybe Dan's going to try it one more time. And I tell you what, Dave, bless you. Dave, bless you. Oh, thank you. God. Dave in chat says, I wonder if Dan isn't having trouble on his end. I knew I loved you, Dave. There you go, supporting me. What the hell? Now, occasionally I know that some people, when they call in, because of the phone that they happen to be on, for whatever reason, this doesn't work out. And eventually we're going to go to VoIP, which is Voice over Internet Protocol, which is what a great deal of the corporations have transmogrified to these days. And in VoIP, what that means is that your phone goes over the Internet. It's a little bit cheaper. You can do a lot of things to it. And the sound quality is not exactly the same that you would get in a hard line from the telephone. I'm sure about this time, Dan is saying, if I could send a bullet from Texas to California, I would certainly do so because, BZ, you need to have a bullet sent your way to wake up, to have you wake up. All I can say, folks, is that, wait a minute, HP is now on here. He said, I'm loud and proud on my end. I can hear BZ, but he can't hear me. Okay. I've got my volume up here. And folks in chat, Dan, by the way, were saying that they couldn't hear you either. So, obviously, heavy sigh. All right, Dan, let's try it one more time. I believe I have all the necessary buttons pushed, etc. And I know that folks are hearing me. And if I'm not mistaken, folks in chat, can you tell me if you were here long enough? Did you hear the intro music to the show? Because that's going to give me a big clue as to whether or not you heard the intro music to the show. Now, here's Dan, and we're going to see if we hear Dan. Dan, do we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Wow, okay, yes, now I can hear you.
Now, the question is, can the audience hear me?
That's the biggest damn point. You got that right. Okay, folks, so in chat, folks who are in chat right now, can you let us know if you hear Dan? Dave Milner, no. Oh, wait. Mary Brockman says
Mary
yay.
says yay.
Yeah, and Dave
Yay.
Milner
They
says
can hear me.
yes. Okay, great. Dan, do we just chalk that up to the SHR studio, or do we chalk that up to Gremlins, or the fact that basically technology hates BZ?
It is a conspiracy, man. I'm telling you, it's a conspiracy.
Hell yeah. Thank you. You're absolutely correct. It's a conspiracy.
That's what it is. That's what it is. You know. See, this is my thought. This is my thought. So Sean goes out of town.
Yep.
Now, is it any coincidence that a brand new setup and everything goes all wonky the day he goes out of town? Let's think about that. So I think he sabotaged it just to get a laugh, and I wouldn't put that beneath him doing that. So we'll blame it all on Sean.
The sad thing is, maybe he's laughing 3,000 miles away. Okay, fine, given. On this end, I didn't think it was so damn funny.
No, not at all.
And the other people
how frustrating it can be.
Didn't think it was that damn funny either. So tell you what I'm suggesting is that we do essentially what we were intending to do last night had Gremlins not decided to interfere. And what I was going to ask you about, because there are so many more things that we know now today, Wednesday, than we did on Sunday with regard to the Las Vegas shooting. You know, it's not necessarily just the shooting itself that we can talk about, but now there's a myriad of adjunct topics that we're discovering are linked up to this stuff, including the reaction on both sides of the aisle that I was bringing up initially, the reaction by the right and the reaction by those on the left, which is damn near insane.
You know, where do you start with this story? It's bizarre enough. I mean, it's bizarre enough. Let's put this in perspective. It's bizarre enough that you have a supposed multimillionaire retiree who likes to gamble, likes to play cards. He's competed in the World Series of Poker. And all of a sudden, this guy goes up and he books a hotel room. It's not a hotel room. This thing was a suite with two rooms, very nice. So he spent some big bucks on this thing. And then over the course of a few days, he hauls up 30 suitcases full of weapons, of every size and imaginable, not to mention all of the ammo that he brought up with him. We know now, we also have some speculation that he had planned an earlier attack on another event. He had looked at trying to book a suite at another hotel that overlooked another event, but was unable to do so. So we know that what we do know is that he planned this out. So he had a plan. He planned this out. He knew what his target was going to be. He took all the time and prep to get everything in place. Now the big question is one word: why? Why did he do this? And now that big question, why, opens up an entire Pandora's box. I mean, we had ISIS claiming responsibility.
Yes, we did.
Easy, I've already had the crazies coming out saying this was a government conspiracy, man. The government did this just like they did Sandy Hook, so that they could enact gun control.
Right, all this false flag crap.
Right, so you've had all the wackos coming out on this. Well, and now, of course, then the very day of the shooting, the very day, I mean, the bodies were not even cold yet with these folks, and we had the Democrats stepping all over the corpses of these poor innocent victims, all over the families with this. You had Gabby Giffords and her husband out, advocating for gun control. Hell, the Democrats were writing up the legislation to start banning, quote unquote, what they consider assault weapons and various accessories to different weapons. And then on top of that, you have the Republicans. Some Republicans starting to jump on board with some of this. You have the number 2 man in the United States Senate, John Cornyn, who jumped on because Feinstein introduced the legislation to ban bump stocks.
Bump stocks, correct.
And then of course Cornyn jumps on this and says, hey, you know what? Hearings on these devices are warranted. So now you have the number 2 Republican in the U.S. Senate saying, hey, you know what? We probably ought to take a look at that. That might be some good legislation we might want to pass in response to this. So that's a lot of the stuff that you're seeing come in this. What we should be talking about, we can have the discussion. If the Democrats want to have the discussion over the Second Amendment, you know what? Let's do that. People will say, well, I'm going to argue against the Second Amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, the Second Amendment is the argument. That is what it stands for. It is the argument for your reasons to be able to own weapons and be able to protect yourself, et cetera, et cetera. There's no argument against it. It is the argument. It is the basis. But if they want to have that discussion, hey, let's have that discussion. But you know what? Let's give the families time to grieve a little bit. Let's not use the families and the victims of this tragic event as a political tool. They're using the victims that unfortunately lost their lives in this shooting. They're using the survivors, all the 500-plus folks that were wounded, injured, different varieties of stuff. They're using them as political pawns in all of this to try to get some, to try to say, hey, you know what? We've got to do this in the name of gun control. See what happens if we don't control guns, folks. Here's the thing. This guy, when it's all said and done, I don't think we're going to find an illegal weapon anywhere in this cache of weapons that he had. We're going to find that everything that he had, he bought legally. So there's nothing in the world that gun control would have done other than short of confiscating weapons. And, of course, we know that that's what the progressives/Democrats want to do. It's not gun control. It's gun confiscation is what they want to do. They want to take all weapons away down to pocket knives if they have their choice. But bottom line is we're going to find out, I think, as everything plays out, that that all these weapons were bought legally. There was nothing under the table in that, but we still got that big question: why? Why did he do that? And folks, you're going to have all the conspiracy theories are flying out there, and we have speculation. How could this guy do this all on his own? He wasn't an expert marksman. He wasn't a military expert, anything like that. So how was he able to, kill 58 people, injure over 500 more from over 1,000 feet away, 300 feet up in the air from a hotel room, et cetera, et cetera? How was he able to do that? You've heard different theories on this, that, he had different devices that, such as the bump stock that allowed him to fire the weapons more rapidly. He also had, different things that allowed him to have more accuracy in the shooting. A lot of different military experts are just saying, this guy just did, spray and pray. Spray and pray is where you simply just unload and just start, going back and forth, just hitting anything and everything that's in the path. So we're gonna have to let the investigation play out. We're gonna have to keep digging deeper and deeper into this guy's past to see what all was there, so that we can come up with the answers. But in the meantime, we're going to have to deal with a lot of the conspiracy theories that are coming up. And, hey, you know what? I'm not objected to look into conspiracy theories. We need to look into them to see if there's any validity to them. If there's any validity to them, let's bring them into the investigation. If there's not any validity to them, we need to squash them so that they don't develop into nonsense. I absolutely cringe every time I hear somebody said Sandy Hook did not happen. That never happened. All those children weren't actually murdered. It was just a government conspiracy. Ladies and gentlemen, until you've actually been to Sandy Hook and you've actually talked to the families like I have, don't try to convince me of this type of bullshit. Once again, you have to take a lot of stuff coming out of the story with a grain of salt. But we're back to that one question, BC. Why? This is the big question, because he's not going to stand trial. He took his own life, and then. So we're going to have to sit here. Why did he do this? And then were there other people involved with it? Those are different things that we're going to have to look at, man.
In any criminal investigation that I did, you have to have 3 elements, what I call the triumvirate of crime, and each one of these things are arenas that need to be explored. Anybody that does any investigation knows that you have to consider these 3 things: means, opportunity, and finally, motive. A lot of people
Bingo.
A lot of people poo-poo motive, but motive is what you need to go into now to discover.
Right.
You forensically autopsy this thing and go backwards, and you go one day in this guy's life, back and back and back, until you come up with a motive, which I submit is going to be incredibly important. But in a good criminal investigation, every investigator needs to do one primary thing: let the evidence point them where they need to go.
Exactly.
You do not need to make your mind up, and then it's not the scientific method, so to speak, where you have just one premise. The scientific method is having one premise, and you're going to submit A. I believe that A needs to be proven. Then I'm going to go out and try to prove or disprove all of these things in the scientific method. You don't have time enough for that in a criminal investigation. These folks in Las Vegas and the FBI are getting bombarded with information by the hour and by the day from people that are wanting to find out and help, if for no other reason, to discover why is it that 52 people are dead. Now, I'm not saying that that's the most heinous thing in the world, and it's not, but, you go back and the Orlando shooting was even worse. But folks say, oh, you can't, there is no comparison. You cannot make a comparison. Well, I'm sorry, yes, you can make a comparison. Sometimes you have to make a comparison. I find it very interesting, Dan, that Jimmy Kimmel came out and said, the very first day, people are pointing the fingers at folks on the left and saying that, we shouldn't be saying anything negative about guns because we need to respect the people that are dead. And he says, this is interesting. He says, well, I have the First Amendment. Everyone else has the First Amendment. And isn't it unusual, Dan, when leftists pull out the First Amendment card when it's convenient for them? Yes, they do have the First Amendment. They never pull it out any other time. But now they're deciding, because it revolves around firearms, they're going to do that. Oh, it's time to pull the full First Amendment card. Nice. Thank you. That's now how we know you operate.
Yeah, and and here's some, and here was another development. The so far investigators have visited with any known associates. They visited with friends, family, and they've hit a roadblock with everything so far as a motive. Why did this guy do it? Why did this guy had no criminal background? Nothing would indicate this. And so they're thinking, okay, so we're going to bring the girlfriend back from the Philippines. And so the girlfriend comes back from the Philippines. They immediately get her, start questioning her, and they find out that she was just as shocked as anybody and everybody that this happened. And in all indications, it looks like he sent her away so that she would not be anywhere near any of this. And they were questioning, well, why did he send $100,000? Well, he wired the money because we were buying another home for my family, which this guy would make, since he was a real estate investor, this was not uncommon for him to do. Actually, this was not uncommon for him to do at all, transferring large sums of money just with his gambling habit, because he won and lost large sums of money that he wired back and forth from his bank accounts. And so this wasn't in initial reports, the people were saying, well, this guy was known to law enforcement authorities. Well, he was known to the extent that they knew that he transferred lots of money. Anybody that transfers lots of money in any form, if they're openly doing it, of course they're going to be known. So, yeah, they knew that this guy was transferring lots of money to his winnings, his losses, et cetera, as far as his gambling. They knew about the transfer for the money to the Philippines. They just needed to see, what. Then they verified, hey, this was for the purchase of a home for the girlfriend's family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this lady, once again, she comes back. She's just as shocked as everybody else as what's happened. And she lived with the guy, but it looks like more than anything, he sent her away because he didn't want her, because he cared about her or anybody that he actually cared about. He sent away and didn't want them to be anything anywhere near this, a part of this, or what have you. So once again, BZ, it comes back to why? What was the motive behind this? This is going to be, and this is what happens. When a shooter takes their own life in this aspect, or they're killed by the police, it's so much harder to determine the actual motive because the guy did not leave a note. He didn't leave sometimes they leave manifestos. We haven't discovered a manifesto. We haven't discovered any type of radical postings on social media like we've seen with a lot of other mass shooters in the past. Nothing is out there so far. But it comes back to exactly what you were saying. We got to keep digging, keep investigating, keep looking at the evidence, and see what, could this guy have been radicalized? Well, yeah, of course he could have been radicalized. But we got to find those connections there to prove that he was radicalized and why he was radicalized. Did he flip his gourd? Did he just lose his mind? Was he dying of some funky disease that made him lose his mind or something? We got to uncover some of that stuff. So there's just so many roads to go down with this investigation, so many leads to follow. There's going to be, folks, there's not going to be hundreds of pieces of evidence. There's not going to be thousands of pieces of evidence. It's not going to be thousands of leads. There's going to be tens of thousands of leads in this, different things that they're going to have to follow and pick through. This investigation to get to that very simple question as to why and motive, folks, we could find something tomorrow. It may be 10 years from now before we discover something, BZ.
That's absolutely correct. Folks, we got to go to a break. So, Dan, I got to ask you the very important question. Can you hang on during the break, and can you come back?
Well, of course, man.
Okay, great. I've got an article that I'd like to read and a couple of questions for everybody, yourself included. Folks, you're listening to the Sack Heads Radio Show. It's Wednesday. It's October 4th, the year of our Lord 2017. Please come back. Well, if I push the right button, we'll come back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sack Heads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sack Heads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch River Common Sense Show hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on shrmedia.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else. So consider this your fair warning.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The Right Guy on SHR Media.
Power brokers use corrupt politicians, deceptive Islam, and lies from establishment media to turn the once shining city on a hill into the city of the blind. What do the elites fear? One man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me at SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Spreaker, iTunes, and YouTube for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because truth is not always pleasant.
Hello, I'm Tim Hart. I'm the guy BZ hires due to his shameless contract with the SHR Media Network to voice his promos. He'd like me to tell you that the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be found on SHR Media Network, Spreaker, and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American media maggots won't. You'll find that the speech is free, but the drinks are not. There, in the saloon, just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ is sending his personal drones of freedom into the wheelhouses and ossicles of lovers of sovereignty and liberty nationally and globally. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, BZ swears that no rights were harmed in the making of this promo.
This is Jersey Joe, host of the Reverb Common Sense, and you're listening to SHRmedia.com.
You are listening to SHRmedia.com. And tonight you're on the Sack Heads radio show. It's Wednesday. It's Sack Heads Wednesday. Unfortunately, Sack Heads Sean and Sack Heads Clint are not here, but you still have Sack Heads BZ. And we're speaking to Dan Butcher of High Plains Pundit Media fame. And obviously we're talking about the things that occurred in Las Vegas recently. We were talking, and I had mentioned that it takes motive, means, and opportunity for people to commit a crime. And Dan had pointed out just before we left that it might be tomorrow when we find out what happened, and it might be, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, a month. It might be another year before we find out what happened. There's another article that just came in, and with each article, Dan, it seems as though things get curiouser and curiouser. Now, I find a lot of my stuff on the Daily Mail, UK Daily Mail, and this is one of those articles, and it goes like this. Stephen Paddock had a huge gun room, says a friend. Stephen Paddock, 64, was described as highly intelligent and strategic by a man who was dating his girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley's sister. The man had multiple encounters with Paddock between 2013 and 2015 and said he mentioned having a gun room in his Mesquite, Nevada home. Now stop. Many people who are gun enthusiasts do in fact have a gun room, and if you have a number of firearms, people who want to keep things safe do have in fact safes in their rooms. This is nothing unusual. His weapon collection was worth tens of thousands of dollars. Obviously, he had the money to be able to do that because of his investments, real estate, etc. And at least one was a made-to-order custom firearm, a source said. Neighbors who lived near Paddock in Reno had earlier described seeing a massive and mysterious safe in his garage. Well, there's not so much mystery behind that. If it's a large safe, that means he's doing the responsible thing as a firearm owner who happens to own a number of them, and he's keeping them, making sure that they don't go anywhere. That's a responsible thing to do. Paddock killed 58 people and injured 527 more in Las Vegas on Sunday. In the wake of violence, neighbors think that safe must have contained guns. Well, no shit, Sherlock. FBI and ATF retrieved a total of 47 guns from 3 locations, including Vegas. Locals had to be evacuated for fear of booby traps as the house was searched. That's an interesting point, Dan, that we're going to get back to. But in this particular article, the Australian man who wasn't mentioned in here, who wanted to remain anonymous, according to the article, had a number of encounters with Paddock between 2013 and 15 after he started dating his girlfriend's sister. In the interview with The Guardian, the man said he knew Paddock to be highly intelligent, strategic in thinking, but showed no behavior that could have predicted the massacre he carried out. Hold that thought. He was extremely intelligent, methodical, conservative, guarded, and strategic. Now, when the Guardian writes conservative, that's a word that we're going to come back to, I suspect. A planning, thinking type of guy is the way the man said, adding that Paddock won a substantial amount of money using algorithms for gambling. Okay, so that's how he came into his cash when he gambled. He was what Las Vegas and other casino players called a whale. In other words, so how did this guy happen to get a suite? He got a suite of rooms because he was a whale. A whale is somebody who spends a lot of money in a casino. And so what they do is they go ahead and comp rooms to these people, treat them very well because they spend a lot of money. So one of the first things people asked was, wait, how come there are 2 broken windows in that side of the Mandalay Bay? Well, it's because his room was that large. It was a suite, which means it was comped. It was a lot of money a night, and that's why there were 2 separate windows involved in that. He had property near Reno until August. Excuse me. He and his girlfriend, who was the sister of Mary Lou Danley, also spent some time at their home, Mesquite, Nevada, where Paddock mentioned his gun room. His comments were that it's a substantial hobby that needs to be protected. A gun room, the man said. Well, stop again. That's obvious. If you're a firearms collector, you need to make sure that your firearms are protected and they're safe. So as they reconstructed the life and recent activities of Paddock in a bid to work out a motive, details keep emerging that suggest the gunman's mental health had deteriorated on the months prior to the massacre. He reportedly experienced significant weight loss in the lead up to the shooting. He also developed an obsession with his girlfriend's ex-husband, Gary Danley, with whom she had been married for more than 20 years before they finalized their divorce in 2015. And the gunman's brother, Eric Paddock, told Reuters in a series of text messages that Danley was sympathetic in dealing with Paddock's allergy-driven quirks. Now, that's a quote, allergy-driven quirks. So this is going already down. This is going a place, tons of places. I didn't see this coming. And I don't think anybody did.
Well, and BZ, there's so much stuff to discuss right here with this. One thing, we've also had another report that's come out that said that in the days and weeks leading up to the mass shooting in Las Vegas, that the shooter had been put on antidepressants. So we're still trying to verify that to see if there was any type of mental instability there. One thing, BZ, and one thing that, over the years of being a reporter and different things and covering crime stories and shootings and accidents and stuff like that, but in particular dealing with crime and dealing with murders and stuff, the first thing that you do, and you did this in law enforcement, was you would sit back and try to get, especially when you're looking for an unknown motive, you want to get a profile, develop a profile of the shooter, of the perpetrator. And so one thing that really stands out in all this, and this guy also owns some property in Florida.
Yes.
The neighbors in Florida also described him in the same way. Very meticulous, very intelligent, but very standoffish. He didn't want to have anything to do with the neighbors. He kept to himself. Keeping to oneself that's that's going to be a lot of people.
That's busy.
But also loners. But stop and think too. When you're profiling a lot of these mass shooters, people that start to retreat into themselves. In this particular case, it becomes very important in setting up the profile for this particular perpetrator, because people that start to withdraw into themselves, they start shutting people out. It becomes kind of an important piece of the puzzle in this case, if that is in fact one of the reasons he sent his girlfriend away. There's also been reports that he beat his girlfriend, that he abused her in public in front of people and different things like that. That's some other stuff that's kind of come out. But putting together the profile, the one thing that stands out in this is the fact, number one, he had the ways and means. He had all the weapons at his disposal. He's had all these weapons for years and years. He just didn't go out at the last minute and buy all of these weapons and all this ammunition, et cetera, et cetera. So he took weapons from his private collection that he used in this crime. The other thing that stands out is how meticulous he was, how he planned this out. We do know for a fact that he had previously was planning a possible nether attack that did not pan out because he couldn't secure the vantage point to where he could put his sniper's nest. He thought he planned this out. He knew exactly where he wanted his vantage point, looking down onto the venue. He was very meticulous in the way he set everything up in the room.
Yep.
He was very meticulous in the way he brought all of the weapons up to the room because remember, folks, a hotel staff, in most cases, are trained to look for suspicious activity, to look for something out of the ordinary. So this guy was very smart in he didn't bring everything up at once. It's not like he sent the valet out to his car and said, hey, bring up all these suitcases. They're a little heavy, but you can get them, no problem. No, he brought them up one, two at a time. It was very secretive in his coming and going. What I think it'll be very interesting to go back and look at the hotel security. One thing I know that law enforcement's going to look at, and they're already looking at, is the hotel security tapes.
Yep.
Because there's got to be some footage of this guy coming and going, bringing all this stuff up to the room over the days leading to the shooting. But it's how meticulous, how well he planned this out is very important to developing a profile of the suspect. In developing that profile is what's going to help us, get to the bottom of the motive in this. And once again, it's just going to a lot of footwork's going to have to, a lot of interviews. Something's going to have to give. BZ, I can't just think. I just can't. Some people have tried to make the comparisons to Charles Whitman shooting up shooting from the University of Texas clock tower back in the 1960s. Well, there's a little bit difference. Whitman, he killed his mother before that attack.
Yes, he did.
So he had committed a murder. He had flipped his gourd when he went out to carry this. But this was not something that he planned for days upon days. He shot his mother and then went up and found a vantage point because he knew he was going to have a confrontation with police at some point. And then he just started taking people out as a sniper. This is a little bit different. This was days and days of meticulous planning and effort went into this. And so it's going to be a little bit, and he didn't murder anybody. He didn't kill, well, that we know of, he didn't kill anybody or harm anybody before the shooting and in the days leading up to it. So it even clouds the mystery of motive anymore. But we're going to have to keep working on that profile and putting it together and digging into this guy's life, which, once again, here's the thing. It's unlike other shooters that we've had up until now. Everything with this guy, with the exception of his gambling habit, which evidently he won more than he lost.
Yep. Or he wouldn't be a multimillionaire.
He wasn't gambling away his fortune. Yeah, he was a high roller, but he wasn't gambling everything away. He did win a lot of money. That's another thing to think about. This was a guy that knew how to win at gambling, whether it was playing cards, playing slots, playing online, or whatever. The guy knew how to win. He knew how to beat the odds. So that shows he's got a lot of intelligence or a lot of meticulous thinking. So, once again, we're just going to have to everything. This is what is so baffling about all this, BZ. Everything up until the shooting was normal in this guy's life, it seems like. Well, on the surface, it seemed normal. Now, what we have to do is get below the surface and dig in to see what all the abnormalities were that we can't see on the surface and see what those abnormalities were that led to this.
A couple of very interesting points in chat. Dave Milner said that Charles Whitman had a brain tumor, and I remember that was true, and I think that was in 1966, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And people make a big deal about the baggage that was taken up to his room. He had apparently 10 bags. Well, look, folks, he had 4 days to do this. He didn't take it all up in one. And what do? What's the first thing you see in a motel? Those carts. So all you need to do is go out to your vehicle, if that's where all your stuff was, and unload 2-3 bags at a time. And in the bags, you could have duffel bags. You could have big suitcases, etc., that would be able to fit these things. And because everything is so busy, I mean, you're talking about a motel with 1,000 rooms. And so people say, well, why didn't the hotel staff notice that he was so strange? They don't have the time to notice that he was so strange. You made a very excellent note of this, though, is when they go back and they look at the video, in any modern motel, and I was just in Las Vegas in July of this year with Freedom Fest, in that motel, there were cameras everywhere. There are cameras in the elevator. There are cameras on every floor, in every hallway. The only place they stop is at your room and in a bathroom. Other than that, there are cameras everywhere. You will be able to track exactly what this guy did. You also mentioned another point, precision. They said he was intelligent. You also weighed in on that as well. This showed wonderful planning. Now, it's confusing because he was not apparently military trained, but the technology between World War II, let's say, and now has changed quite a bit, a massive amount. So what's really confusing to everybody and frustrating to everybody, which is why I'm sure all these theories are being, there's a lot of conjecture going on, is because we do not know immediately within 2 days, a day or so, what the guy's motive was. Now, ISIS has come back. It's interesting to note that ISIS has doubled down and said that he's connected to them. They're continuing to be rather insistent on that. But, let's just let the evidence go where it goes. If it goes to ISIS, fine. If it goes to mental problems, fine. If it goes to he was under terrible pressure because of gambling debts, fine. Let's just let it go where it goes. But if there's one thing that I did discover is the guy was idiosyncratic. He was really kind of strange. From this article that I was reading, it said Paddock often wore brown cloth gardening gloves to prevent rashes from contact with cleaning chemical residues, the brother wrote.
Yeah.
He was also allergic to many pills, and he was unable to renew his pilot's license because of it. He had flown planes since he was a teenager because he could not take the pills needed to reduce his blood pressure. At casinos where he was a regular, this is really interesting. At casinos where he was a regular, he was such a valued customer that staff obliged his requests to wash his room's carpet with plain water. This is also interesting. The reason Mary Lou looks so plain in various photographs they keep posting is because for him, she would not wear perfumes or hairsprays or anything with scents in it because it affected him.
Right.
Another, just all sorts of strange idiosyncratic things that just keep piling on.
BZ, there's a couple of things I want to touch on that you were talking about. Number one was he was a well-known high roller in Vegas.
Yes, he was.
Okay, so definitely the people at the Mandalay Bay Hotel knew who this guy was.
You bet.
Okay, and just off the top, they would not assume anything out of the ordinary with this guy.
No, because they want to keep his business.
Nothing. Exactly. They want his money in the hotel, in the casino, etc. That's where they want him. So they're not going to see anything. They may even turn a blind eye to certain activities because he is a high roller. He could use that to his advantage. The other thing you mentioned was the gloves. those are the same type of gloves that he was wearing when the police used explosives to break the door down and get inside. He had already killed himself. Something to think about. One other thing that keeps coming out, and this is the big question, and I'm getting this question texted right now several times, is, well, this guy wasn't an expert marksman. How in the world could he kill 58 people? How in the world could he, injure another 500 plus? Okay, well, here's what happened. And this is and I come back to a statement that I had made that I've heard a lot of different people talking about. If you look at, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay, BZ, because some of this I'm going to be talking off of my own observation from what I have listened to in the audio, what I've seen in the videos of the shooting and everything. Okay, this guy wasn't just popping off at individual people. Okay, he wasn't pop, 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 pop. This wasn't another instance of a sniper shooting like we saw in Dallas, where the guy was very, very meticulous in his targets. It was a sniper shooting such as Charles Whitman, where Charles Whitman was very meticulous, where he aimed up on his targets and had time to shoot at them. You're talking about all of this carnage transpired in right at 9 minutes. So he was in a constant state of fire.
They said that
if you listen to
if you listen to the tapes or the videos, you can hear it. They indicated that he shot for anywhere from 9 to 11 minutes in about 10 separate volleys. But
what that goes back into, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because of all your years in law enforcement and stuff and investigating crimes and stuff. In the way that with the different way that he had the weapons set up, the different things that once again with the bump stock to help him fire more rapidly, this really plays a lot of credence into the current theory that he didn't have a specific target. He just wanted to create as much carnage as possible, and that goes back to basically what the military calls spray and pray. That's basically where you unload and you just start going back and forth hoping to hit anything and everything in any particular area. And that's in the way it's set up, and it looks like that's what his theory was in the way he was shooting, especially from the two, because he had one vantage point and then he broke out one window, then he went to a different vantage point for another window to get another spot to see down. But it looks like that, his idea when he opened up fire was just to get as many people as because he knew the police were going to respond. They were going to see him. They were going to get up there fairly quickly, and his thing was to take down as many people as he possibly could. And the way that he could do that was basically just unload, open it up, and just start spraying fire back and forth in as wide a pattern as he possibly could.
I would tend to lend credence to that for a number of reasons, Dan. One of them is, let's talk about a bump stock for a second, because people not familiar with firearms say, what the fuck is a bump stock? Well, basically it's an accessory, which is why it is not illegal. BATFE does not proscribe a bump stock. It's an accessory that you can attach to certain long guns. But here's the thing, as an accessory, anybody that's ever used one knows they're not that damn accurate, and they're not that damn reliable, because you cannot create a bump stock for essentially every long gun you have out there. So they fit within reason, but they're not perfect, and you're going to have a staccato of shots. Basically what happens is you stick your finger. We got one more minute to go, and then I got to go to a break. You stick your finger in the trigger, and essentially this device bumps your trigger finger back and forth. It's I can't even think of anything that it's similar to. It's like action reaction. Once you pull the trigger and it comes back up, it bumps your finger back into the trigger again and keeps it going. But it's not rhythmic. It's not consistent.
Right. This is kind of like an automatic reset of the trigger.
Yeah, it's not terribly accurate. So
no.
Yeah, we got about 30 seconds left. So I'm going to make a point, and then I want to come back and I want to have your view on this as well. The deal was the concert was on a Sunday. He had a position, the ultimate Sun Tzu position of advantage in that town,
yes.
in that motel. And the other thing is, 52 people killed. Oh my God! It could have been so many more. Why? You may ask. 527 injured. I'm glad. I praise God that more people weren't killed or injured, because from his position of advantage, and all the long guns he had in there were good, at least for probably a good 1,000 yards. They estimate it was about 400 to 500 yards from the top of the window to the venue below. But folks, you got to understand, there were 20,000 people at that concert. 20,000. And he did not have the time, even in, say, 11 minutes, which I think is the amount of time from he began to fire and then ended. No, I don't think accuracy was involved in this thing at all. Folks, we got to go to a break. We're talking to Dan Butcher. You're listening to the Sack Heads Radio Show on the SHR Media Network.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sack Heads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sack Heads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch River Common Sense Show hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on shrmedia.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else. So consider this your fair warning.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
Power brokers use corrupt politicians, deceptive Islam, and lies from establishment media to turn the once shining city on a hill into the city of the blind. What do the elites fear? One man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me at SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Spreaker, iTunes, and YouTube for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because truth is not always pleasant.
Hello, I'm Tim Hart. I'm the guy BZ hires due to his shameless contract with the SHR Media Network to voice his promos. He'd like me to tell you that the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be found on SHR Media Network, Spreaker, and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American media maggots won't. You'll find that the speech is free, but the drinks are not. There, in the saloon, just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ is sending his personal drones of freedom into the wheelhouses and ossicles of lovers of sovereignty and liberty nationally and globally. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, BZ swears that no rights were harmed in the making of this promo.
This is Jersey Joe, host of the Reverb Common Sense, and you're listening to SHRmedia.com.
And you are listening to the SHR Media Network, and you're listening to the Sack Heads Radio Show. It is Wednesday, October 4th, And we're talking to the High Plains pundit media magnate himself, not M-A-G-N-E-T, but M-A-G-N-A-T-E, the wise, scholarly Dan Butcher of Texas fame. So, Dan, we were talking about positions of advantage, etc., but there's so many things left unsaid, so many other places that we could go with this. But in terms of what you suggested, this guy was not a Charles Whitman, who was a trained Marine sniper and didn't have but a slight fraction of the targets at that Texas tower in 1966 and still hit people with amazing reliability in a weapon that was not as sophisticated as today's weapon. So as I pointed out earlier, 20,000 people down below from a massive position of advantage, a couple of 100 feet above and looking down upon that particular venue, you're going to kill 52 people. And again, God bless that it wasn't more people that were killed.
Oh, exactly. And, once again, and I'm going to jump on something that really irritates. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Hello. I bet everybody heard that. One thing that really immediately came out was, this was a country music festival that was taking place. A lot of big country music acts. Jason Aldean was on stage at the time when the shooting started, and a lot of, let's just be frank, an executive at CNN, or excuse me, at CBS lost their job because they came out and made a comment along the lines of, hey, you know what? That was a country music festival. They were probably all Trump supporters anyway. And then, of course, you had a lot of the nonsense coming from a lot of the morons on the left that said, well, you know what? This was retribution for all of these folks that voted for Donald Trump. That's what you get for voting for Donald Trump. Now you're paying the price for voting for Trump. Types of stuff like that.
Despicable.
On top of the folks coming out saying, hey, you know what? Now we need gun control. But the fact is that we were very fortunate. And I take this. There's a story. I want to share this real quick. John Rich, who is a member, John is actually from my hometown of Amarillo, Texas here. And, of course, they were performing at this festival. And John was packing that. And he not only had one weapon, he had a couple of weapons with him. And he actually gave one of his weapons to an off-duty police officer who was unarmed and said, hey, guys, we're going to have to take care of business. So that was kind of some of the reaction you saw to somebody that was armed and ready to do something. But number one, I think the type of attack it was, if he had 15 minutes to shoot, would have been, I think you probably would have seen the death toll doubled. You would have seen the injury toll doubled. But I think, because there was such a quick reaction from law enforcement, being able to pinpoint where the shooter was, getting up there, getting up to the hotel room and disrupting. He knew they were coming. He had set up cameras to warn him when they were coming, et cetera. He knew they were coming. And he was, he had all the weapons. He didn't know how long he was going to have to shoot. And he had all of those weapons up there prepared to shoot as long, as hard, and as fast as he possibly could to take out as many people as he possibly could. But thankfully, the law enforcement was able to react as quickly as they did. I'm sure the 9 to 11 minutes was an eternity in hell for everybody that was experiencing this. But thankfully they were able to get up there and disrupt him where he took his own life and stop this. But, once again, it just, how do you put this? It's pure hatred. Is that a good way to put it? Pure hatred that we saw in some of the comments in the aftermath of this from folks on the left. Folks, that's just pure hatred that you're seeing there. You don't see people on the right making comments like that after shootings. Hey, you know what? You leftist idiots. Y'all deserve to be shot at. You know what? When we had the shooting in Orlando, definitely you had some of the real crank people on the right. That all homosexuals are evil and need to die and go to hell. They made some comments along the lines because obviously that was a gay nightclub. But from normal folks like me and you didn't see the nonsense comments. But that's not the same as on the left. You see that from every aspect on the left. The pure hatred in the comments. That they deserve this. They deserve to die. That's a mantra. You have people on the left openly calling for the assassination of Donald Trump, openly calling for the assassination of Republican senators, of Republican representatives, state lawmakers, etc. If we're going to see anything that might have radicalized. Now, the thing is, the shooter's brother has said, you know what? This guy never talked about politics or religion or anything. He cared about gambling. So it'll be interesting to see, was he radicalized by some of the rhetoric from the leftists, from the very leftist militant groups? Was he involved with something like that? Folks, there's different forms of terrorism, but bottom line is this was a terrorist act. Okay, anytime you have something like this spreads fear like this. This is a form of terrorism. Was it somebody acting alone? It's wait to be seen. If he had any accomplices, the investigation hopefully will reveal that. Was he radicalized in some way? I don't think there was any type of. Doesn't look like there was any type of Islamic influence into this, but definitely maybe you could have seen some homegrown terrorism with some radicalization from the leftist groups, because we're certainly seeing that. BZ, with a lot of the violence that's coming from Antifa and from a lot of the other groups, the New Black Panthers, et cetera, et cetera. You're seeing it, from even some of the radical groups on the right. You're seeing some of that, but not nearly as prevalent as what we're seeing from the radicalization on the leftists. These are folks that are openly calling for the overthrow of the government, doing away with the Constitution of the United States, remaking the country in their own image, doing away with basic freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, that kind of freedom of religion. That's what these folks are openly calling for. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any connections there. Or, was this just a simple case of a guy that lost his mind somehow? It's just a continuing mystery, BZ, all the way around.
The strict definition of terrorism, by the way, involves for a political or a sociological motive. Right. So if we're going to label it terrorism, I'd say that's a little too early, because we do not yet know
too early.
We do not yet know his specific motive about this. Now, it all gets so wacky. It all gets, what did they say? Curiouser and curiouser about this. There's some extra information that came in. Now, they find out that this girlfriend had multiple IDs, multiple social security numbers, and she had married apparently two men simultaneously. She goes back and forth from Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan, Australia. It's just every aspect about this is just getting so strange. She is a Philippines native. She did use two social security numbers during her 2+ decades in the United States, and was a bigamist by marrying two men at the same time. Public records show that. It's just so bizarre, the entire thing.
Here's something to look into with the girlfriend, because she's not in the clear yet. She's still a person of interest here. But with the type of travel she's doing, once again, we know that this particular individual, the shooter, he was in the habit of transferring lots of money. That was the money that he was known to transfer, okay, to either cover business transactions, gambling transactions, what have you. Now, the question has to be asked, is there some type of criminal aspect in this? Because, usually when you see somebody like this that's traveling from country to country, from the United States to Japan to the Philippines, etc., using multiple Social Security numbers, you have to go, hey, you know what? Is this a money courier? Is this somebody that's carrying cash back and forth?
Potentially.
So you have to stop and think, what is there some connections there? Some underlying pinnings there. Was there something with this lady that drove him mad? I mean, BZ, it's just so bizarre because once again, usually when this is the first mass shooting in a long time that I can remember that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because we've had so many of these things, but this is the first one in a long time, and I know I keep coming back to this. Well, there was nothing there, no indications, no manifesto, no postings on social media, no bragging that, no anti-political statements, no anti-religious statements, no anti-this, no anti-that. Absolutely nothing there yet. And I put a big yet with a question mark there, just like I do with the terrorism aspect with a big question mark. But there's so many questions there as to why, because there's nothing there. No manifesto, no nothing. The guy didn't give us any hint of anything. Usually these folks like to brag a little bit, or they want people to they think they're going to be a hero, or they want people to feel sorry for them, or they want people to notice them. This guy was just the opposite in every aspect. He certainly didn't want anybody to notice him. People already did know him because he was a high roller. No political affiliations whatsoever so far, no religious affiliations so far, no radical affiliations whatsoever so far, nothing so far. And that is what is so bizarre about this, and is raising, once again, that's what raises so many questions that have to be answered, and that's what also leads to a lot of the conspiracy theories that are starting up there.
Bingo.
But you know what? But in this case, and I think everybody knows how anti-conspiracy theory is. I love to debunk conspiracy theories, but I like to look at them and see if there's any validity. In this particular case, folks, you know what? It's going to be worth the effort following up on the conspiracy theories as well, because there might be something there that can open a door to help solve the big question that BZ and I are still pondering tonight. Why? What was the motive?
It just gets more bizarre and more bizarre. A question that came through my mind was he using her, or was she using him? Because now I found this out. In 1996, Mary Lou wed Jose Bustos. All right. Oh, right. First, okay, let me back up a little bit. First, Mary Lou came into the U.S. as Mary Lou Natividad. She married that guy, Gary Danley, in 1990, and she took his surname. Now, Danley, 76, lives in Arkansas, but he's not talking to anybody. Okay, so in 1996, Mary Lou marries Jose Bustos and became Mary Lou Bustos. But she did not dissolve her marriage to Danley until 2015, and this is proven by divorce records. Both marriage licenses were filed in Clark County, Nevada, which includes the city of Las Vegas, even though the Danleys lived in Tennessee and Arkansas around the time of the marriage, and the Bustoses lived in California. Mary Lou also has a daughter currently living in California, but nobody knows whether one of her husbands or another man who fathered that particular child. So in California, her name is registered as Mary Lou Natividad-Bustos, and her birthday's listed as January 1962, making her 55 years old. Under a different Social Security number in Nevada, her name is Mary Lou Danley, and her birthday is listed as December 1954, making her 62 years old. Then it gets stranger. At times, this is a quote, at times her identities merged. Mary Lou filed for bankruptcy in 2012 under the name Bustos while she was still married to Danley and living with Paddock in Reno. Her lawyer during the bankruptcy has not yet responded to a request for comment. Mary Lou held multiple addresses, some simultaneously, in Arkansas, Tennessee, California, Florida, and other states, and often moved through cities within those states. We also know that she flew back and forth to Indonesia, to the Philippines, to Japan. So you want to talk about bizarre? Even holding that guy Paddock aside for a while, this is one bizarre little unit that we're discovering now about her. And no wonder they called her into LAX today. She came into LAX and they snatched her up, and I'm sure they're grilling the crap out of her. So let me ask you, Dan, with all of this strangeosity going on, does she know something, or is she just a buffoon? Is she being used?
Well, let's add some more mystery to it here,
Okay,
BC,
I'm ready.
Because, speaking with neighbors in Reno and different things, particularly I think everybody, the main house, of course, they've searched different properties that he owned around the country, but the specific property where you saw the pictures of where they had torn down the garage door and stuff, that was the main residence that he shared with this lady. Talking to neighbors, when he bought the house, he paid over $300,000 cash. Think about that. He paid over $300,000 cash for the house. There was no mortgage. He paid cash for it. So this was not uncommon for him to make large real estate purchases with cash.
Sure.
Now, he made a lot of alterations to the house. Darkening the windows, putting up a fence. The neighbors actually all got a petition together because they thought the fence was ugly. They couldn't understand why the guy wanted to obstruct a beautiful view all around the home. But it was because the guy wanted privacy. He wanted privacy. He wanted to be left alone. He kept to himself. He was not very outgoing. He didn't want to interact with neighbors or
There you
anything.
go.
Now,
That's
the
me.
girlfriend, on the other hand, was just the opposite. Now, you would think that, somebody that's hooked up with and living with somebody that is trying to be that reclusive might be reclusive themselves. No, she was very outgoing.
Yep.
She talked with neighbors. The neighbors actually found her to be very pleasant. Now, neighbors that did have some interaction with Paddock said that he was 6'4". They thought he was a gentle giant. Actually, he was very nice to them, but he didn't talk a lot. He wanted to be left alone. Wanted to be to himself. But on the other hand, the girlfriend, very outgoing for somebody that is using multiple identifications, multiple Social Security numbers, traveling about like she is with some questionable history with marriage. You would think, maybe I want to keep a low profile. No, she was very outgoing, visited with the neighbors. The neighbors found her very pleasant, very easy to talk to. They really liked her. They liked visiting with her, So they found her to be a very nice person. So you have in this couple here, one that is seeking his privacy, wanting to keep to himself, paying, for large transactions in cash. Of course, obviously, they knew about the cash because he's withdrawing it and moving the money around. We do maybe have some questions as to if the girlfriend may, I brought up, I will call that my own conspiracy theory in this case. Was the lady running money from the Philippines to Japan to the United States in some form or fashion. That's something that might be that needs to be investigated. But on the other hand, here she was, very outgoing, very friendly, wanting to associate the neighbors. Hell, she probably wanted to be part of the neighborhood homeowners association, the block party. She probably wanted to be on the block party committee and stuff like that. So it just gets more bizarre, more odd, all the way around. The brother who has become the brother of this guy is on every time you turn on the TV. He's on with another interview, and he hasn't changed his stories any. He's been very consistent with all of his stories and what he says, standing and talking for the family, saying, "Hey, you know what? My brother was a little strange, kept to himself, but he wasn't abnormal. There was nothing that was shocking that would lead him to do this shooting." So, and BZ, this is, and I know we keep harping on this, but it's very important to point out that the more doors we go through, the more doors are going to get closed, and also the more doors that are going to be opened into unknown paths in this investigation. And that's why you're going to see, you're talking about this guy's now become the worst mass murder shooter in the history of our country. And so, there's a lot of resources that are going to be brought to bear on this case, from the FBI, from local law enforcement, from different government agencies, et cetera, to try to get to the bottom of this. And, I think every time they turn over a stone, they're going to find 20 more stones that need to be turned over in this case because, God, BZ, just think about it. There's, usually by this time in a case, with these mass shootings, we've got a motive for the 6 o'clock news, because we've read the manifesto.
Right.
We've seen his postings on Facebook, on YouTube, videos, everything. Nothing, not a damn thing with this guy, BZ.
Now, the funny thing is, you mentioned the brother, and the first thing that came to my mind was Ted Kaczynski and his brother Dave. Ted was an iconoclast who wanted to just go out and live by himself. Now, this guy wasn't that isolated, not nearly enough. But the comparison is, until someone came to him, an FBI agent by the name of James Fitzgerald, I think it was, came to him and said, "Look at this information. Does this stuff sound like it's written by your brother?" And the guy didn't want to admit it, meaning that even though he knew his brother, Ted, was odd, Dave Kaczynski did not want to didn't realize in what strange direction Ted had gone. I would submit that this other guy, Paddock's brother, is possibly just as naive about his brother as well, and anybody else. It's one of those things that it's a constant, it's a strange dichotomy, because as you point out, even when you go one particular direction, you can make a justification for, aha, I have him now. Like, he's a loner. Okay, well, lots of these guys are loners. Well, BZ is something of a loner too, so I must be a whack job on that. So for everything that you point out, well, he's a loner, he's this, he's that, well, you can also make the inference that, well, this is not entirely abnormal. Oh, that he had a lot of cases. He's a whale. He's living in a motel for 4 days before this occurs, and he goes down, and would it be odd for a whale to have a lot of, say, luggage, a lot of cases to go up into his room? I don't think anybody in there would bat an eye about that. Would it be odd?
Well, especially.
No, go ahead.
Well, you know what? No, and here you bring up two good points, and I want to come back to you. Is everything abnormal about this guy? And I know this is going to sound like an oxymoron, but everything abnormal about this guy makes him seem more normal. Okay. I'm a homebody. I like to spend time at home with my family, but I also like to get out and do public speaking and different things like that. But I like to spend time at home. Does that make me abnormal? No. It makes me a family man. It makes me a husband, makes me a father. But so everything abnormal makes this guy even more normal. And here's one thing, and you brought up the Unabomber. And here is one thing that could be very interesting is did this, and it'll be, and I'm sure that law enforcement's going back and looking at every email they've received, every handwritten letter, letter, etc. You know, is there anything out there? Because, you know, the Unabomber put out his manifesto. We've had different serial killers over the years that would taunt the newspapers. Yeah, Jack the Ripper taunted the newspapers with different things he would send in and write. The Green River Killer, the Son of Sam, you know, different people like that would taunt by writing things to the newspapers. So here's the thing. You're gonna have to, and one thing that I would do as a reporter is all of a sudden I'm going back and I am researching every comment that has been put on a website, especially for the local newspapers, because this guy probably was doing stuff locally, okay? Especially since he lived in the area and it was specifically, he knew the area, he knew the targets, he knew what was happening, the different festivals. So they go back and look at media and go back and look in the comment sections. Did this guy make any comments you know, online to any editorials? Did he send any emails, letters to the editor, anything like that that we've seen in the past? Because, you know, right now I've already said, when we've already established that, you know, we didn't find anything on Facebook, Twitter, no big manifesto as of yet. So one thing that I think people are going to have to look for, you know, and you brought up a very good point because, the Unabomber, very intelligent individual, wanted to be left alone. Of course, he went to the extreme, living in a little shack out in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere. But the point being is that, you know, are there any underlying writings anywhere that might just give us the slightest little hint as to why, as the motivation for why this you know, you can't even describe, you know, we can put a lot of words on this. If it was heinous, it was a massacre. Bottom line, it was hell on earth, pure hell on earth, what these folks went through in Las Vegas.
Absolutely. It's the bottom of the hour. We got to go to a break. Dan, can you come back after for the final segment?
Well, why not, man? I'm good to go to the top of the hour.
Okay, grand. Folks, we're going to take a break. You're listening to the Sack Heads Radio Show. It's Wednesday, October 4th on the SHR Media Network. Don't go away.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sack Heads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sack Heads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show.
every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
The bloviating Zeppelin. He's big-footed enough radio shows to last a lifetime, courtesy of Sean, Clint, Ken, and Jersey Joe. Now it's time for him to waddle on his own 2 feet via the glorious SHR Media. Gird thy loins for the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Coming soon to Ossicles near you. Excelsior.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Folks, you are in fact listening to the SHR Media Network. And it's Wednesday, so it must be Sack Heads. And it is the Sack Heads radio show, only I'm going to say it's Sack Head singular tonight on Wednesday, October 4th. Year of our Lord 2017. We were talking to Dan Butcher of High Plains Pundit Media fame, and my God, we've been talking for an hour and a half about the shooting and all the various ramifications from the shooting this past Sunday. Dan, you made an excellent point, and it's so unusual in a case like this. What's one of the first things that everybody goes to when we discover that there's a shooting, or there's an assassination, or there's a riot, or someone calls someone a nasty name, or calls them a racist? One of the first things we do is we go to social media. Even this guy Hodgkinson, James Hodgkinson, who shot Steve Scalise in June. Even this guy, a registered Democrat, by the way, who did have a political motive, even this guy had social media. So one of the first things that happened is everyone scoured social media. And trust me, you and I both know if anything had turned up, we'd know about it by now. But it hasn't. That in itself is highly irregular in situations like this.
Yeah, this guy, up until the moment of the shooting, was ordering room service. I mean, he wasn't. One thing. It's some of the things that we do know in this case is once again how meticulous and all the steps that he took to not draw any attention. And I think we've pretty well established that he used his position as a high roller to maybe have different people turn a blind eye to what he was doing. He definitely used that to his advantage because he knew that, when he was, in the hotel that they would bend over backwards for him. And anything he wanted, they would get. They would not pay much attention to him because, obviously, they want him to spend a lot of money in the hotel. They want him to lose a lot of money in the casino.
Bingo.
Etc.
You just brought up brought up an excellent point, and that's this. He had been at this for so long that if whatever happened had been in his mind for more than a year or 2 years, if that's how critical he was thinking and how far back he had been planning this, he got everyone used to seeing him in a suite, probably used to seeing him with a lot of luggage, and when it finally occurred last Thursday is when he first checked in, probably by that point everybody said, "Oh, it's just Stephen Paddock again. He's a whale. Welcome back. Here's your suite."
I want to do something. I want to address something Dave just put. Dave just made an excellent point in the chat room, and I'm going to expand on that. And Dave said, Mark Dan, look at his age. He might not have been into social media. I will expand on to that even further.
Yeah.
I would say this guy shunned social media. Why? Because we already know that he wanted privacy.
Yep.
He didn't want to have he valued his privacy.
Yeah.
He didn't want anybody to know what he was doing. And so that is one thing that he definitely probably went to lengths to was to minimize his social media, and to definitely, he probably went to great lengths even, and he probably had the means to minimize his internet exposure as well. And so, once again, so where was he known? He was known individually in the casinos, in the card rooms, in the gambling circles, and so that definitely played into his advantage, particularly to where he chose to put his sniper's nest for his vantage point over the venue to carry out the carnage that he did. We know that for sure. It's once again, we're going to keep coming back to this and probably have a few more shows on this as to why this happened. And I want to do this real quick too, BZ. I want to encourage everybody to go and look at when we have stories like this, the victims always become forgotten, and so we have to remember, but there's so many victims in this case. Not only the ones that were killed, but also the ones that were injured, the ones that are still clinging for their lives, the ones that are, I would tell you right now, there are 22,000 people that were at that concert that had their lives changed forever that night, in one way or another. A lot of them for bad, for bad. They're going to suffer for many years after this, whether it is mentally, physically, etc. There's going to be a lot of healing that's going to have to take place over the years after this, and a lot of times that gets swept under the rug as to what's going to happen for these folks. So I want to remind everybody, don't forget about the victims. I know we're sitting here talking about why this happened, motivation, what caused him to do this, etc. And you guys have probably noticed I've used his name probably one time in this entire in the hour and 40 minutes we've been on the air. So I've done that on purpose because I didn't want to mention his name. I didn't want to pay any type of homage to this guy in any way. So that's why I refer to him as perpetrator, suspect, nutcase, nutbag, etc., etc. But I encourage everybody, go look at the names of all of the victims, more specifically all of the folks that were killed. This was a crime that affected everybody from all walks of life, rich, poor, black and white, Hispanic. It didn't matter if you were straight, if you were gay. It did not matter. There were country music fans. People say, well, these were country music fans. Those were a bunch of white people. No. There was if you look at the victims in this, and if you look at the crowd and everybody that was hurt in this, there was such a wide variety of different people from all different backgrounds that were affected by this. So this was not a crime where, that's something else that kind of takes out away from motive. This was not a crime that was being perpetrated against a specific people. This was not a crime that was being carried out against specifically white people, specifically black people, specifically homosexuals, or anything like this. This was a crime that was carried out indiscriminately against anybody and everybody that happened to be in a bullet's path fired from this monster. And so this is the type of stuff that should bring us together, not divide us. This is why I've been so adamant in shutting down people that are wanting to have the gun debate right now. Now, this is not the time and it's not the place. We can have it. We can have that debate. We can have that discussion at a later time. Now's not the time. Now is the time to have the discussion about, what, helping these folks get their lives back together, helping them put everything back together, finding some help and some closure for the families, for the victims. We have to remember all of that, because these folks, greatly affected. They've all been greatly affected. A large loss of life, families forever altered, lives forever changed at the hands of a monster. You're talking about folks. You had. Here's the other thing. I mentioned that you had whites, you had blacks, you had Hispanics. You had people from you had lawyers, you had mechanics, you had everybody, you name it, you had them in this audience. But you also had every age range. This was not specifically targeted towards millennials. It wasn't old people, young people. There were kids in this audience, folks. There were parents ushering, sheltering their kids, families in this. Families were being targeted in this. So this affected all across the spectrum. And you need to look at that and realize and make sure that, we cannot let these folks try to make the argument, well, this was specifically for this and this. No, there was nothing specific about this. This was, other than all of the planning that this guy took place to carry out the act itself and the targets were as random as you could possibly get, BZ.
It's an interesting point. Paul White Mamba made this in chat, and he said, okay, maybe gambling debt, big swing, loses a pilot's license, and the guy decides to say screw it and goes out with a bang. Maybe his Filipino woman is on the wrong Islamic side of stuff going down in the Philippines. Maybe he had a bad diagnosis from his doc. I mean, all of those things are valid to the point that we are right now. And it continues to be confounding. The social media thing, and that's because he was a loner. But it's not because technologically he couldn't do that. We go back to the point that everyone said he's highly intelligent and he has designed algorithms that he utilizes when he gambles, which enables him to win a lot of money. So it's not that, as you point out, it's not because he can't get on social media. It's because he chooses not to. Technologically speaking, who puts cameras on a cart outside the room to make sure that their 6 is covered so he knows when people are approaching? Oh, this is another thing I wanted to throw in real quick. No one mentions the security guard who went up to the door before the police got there, and he got shot at through the door, and I think he got struck as well. That's a rather amazing thing. But once that guy approached, this Paddock dude, he knew the jig was up. That's it. Folks are coming now. There's no other way.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he didn't waste any time in taking his own life. And so now there were some indications that he maybe had some plans to escape and stuff like that. I don't think he did.
I didn't,
because of the way the room was set up. I think he was going out in a blaze and knew that he would probably be shot by the police or take his own life. Of course, he took the cowardly way out. He took his own life. I'll correct something. I want to correct myself on something I said earlier, and that was about this guy's online presence. This guy actually did, even though he wasn't active in such things as Facebook, he wasn't active with Twitter, anything like that. He was active online in the gambling circles, with the online gambling and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
It'll be very interesting, and of course, in the online gambling community, they have open forum. It's not just the gambling taking place. They also have open forum discussions and stuff like that. So I'm sure the police and law enforcement are going back in and looking at all of his activity and his presence in the online online gambling and online gaming community, and maybe they'll be able to find something there to help connect the dots with all of this. So he did. It's even for a guy that was seeking his privacy, he did have a strong presence in the community, in the gambling community, online, obviously in person, and also dealing with real estate. He bought and sold real estate. So it's not like he was trying to hide anything. So once again, any abnormal stuff we find just points to him even being more normal than you or I sitting here, BZ. Something happened. Something happened, whether it was radicalization, influence, mentally, usually the first thing I steer away from is mental issues. Mental issues I like to keep on the back burner till we've ruled everything else out, because I want to look for radicalization. I want to look for criminal history. I want to look for written statements, anything like that, before we bring the mental issue thing into this. Because the reason is, particularly on the left, that's usually the first thing they jump to when they are trying to defend somebody that was involved in a murder case or something like that. Well, they suffered from mental illness or something like that. So I like to keep that on the back burner as the last resort in any type of investigation like this. And then when we've cleared everything else out, then we start looking into the guy's mental history, seeing if he did have some mental issues or stuff like that.
I see no evidence to indicate throughout his life that he had mental issues. He was a loner, period, end of statement. But, Dan, we can't stop there. How about if I throw another turd into the punch bowl of this guy with this? There was a quote, and there was a conference. Las Vegas is so strange. It's a metropolitan police department helmed by a sheriff. It's one of the few departments like that in the state of Nevada. Yeah. So Sheriff Joseph Lombardo says, at face value, he had to have some help at some point, and we want to ensure that that's the answer. Maybe he was a superhuman who figured this out all on his own, but it would be hard for me to believe that. Police confirmed the shooter meticulously planned his strike on the Route 91 Harvest Festival from his vantage points in the Mandalay Hotel. Now, there's also, Jesus, it just gets so complicated. Somebody on social media put out a post and then took it down, showing that there was a bill for the room. It was a 5-digit bill, because that's the number of the room. It was 5 digits, indicating that this guy ordered what you would consider to be a sufficient amount of people for 2. And on this bill, and I didn't get a screen capture of it, it said, listed under that, guests, 2. So, was there another person involved? Is this evidence of not a loner, but someone who had some kind of assistance? And if so, where'd that person go?
Well, that's going to come into play. Was there any type of criminal element involved in this? Because, anytime you have gambling involved and you have a real high roller gambler involved like this, that was a lot, once again, that was a lot of the speculation behind the motivation as to why Jack Ruby took out Lee Harvey Oswald. Was because that he was ordered by the mob to do so because he had a lot of gambling debts and different things like that. So you have to stop and think, okay, well, once again, that doesn't kind of play here because there was not really a specific target, so to speak, that we know of yet. So there's a lot of different things here. Was he just ordering a lot of food at one time?
Was he hungry?
He to do it? Maybe, here's the thing, somebody that's on death row, that, here in the state of Texas, I don't know about other states, here in the state of Texas, they get a last meal and they get to order whatever they want. And usually these guys pig out before they're carried in for the lethal injection.
Why wouldn't you?
Hey, was this guy, hey, I know I'm fixing to go out. I'm going to load up on food, enjoy myself, whatever, There's so many different things here that just gets more crazy and crazy and crazy as you look at this. And so this is where, now this is one thing, and I will tell you right now, if there was a second person in that room, okay, surely we would have seen somebody coming and going on the security cameras.
Yes.
And if law enforcement had seen somebody coming and going, you had better damn well believe they would have already put out a bulletin saying, hey, we're looking for this person as a person of interest in this case, So that's my logic. I'm thinking if there was anybody else in the room, they would have been seen coming and going at some point, and the police would already be on that and put out, hey, we're looking for this person as a person of interest. So that's what I kind of think throws a little bit of water on that fire and on that theory, is I think we would have seen somebody coming and going in the video surveillance, and the police would have already, if the police were speculating that somebody else was in that room, they would have already put out a notice for a person of interest. Now, on the same token, I am sure that anybody and everybody that's ever come into contact with this guy in his life is going to be talked to. If you went to kindergarten with him, ladies and gentlemen, if you went to kindergarten with this guy, lived next door to him, ever talked to him in the supermarket, you're going to get a visit from the FBI.
It keeps getting odder and stranger the longer it goes. I would be very curious about this. In every major investigation, law enforcement does this. I would do this when I was working homicide. I would have what are called holdbacks. These are things that I would not tell anyone. I would never mention them to the media, and sometimes I wouldn't even tell them to the families. Because what that does is that keeps certain people, depending on who it is that you suspect, that keeps people honest, so that if you hear a particular bit of information, you know for a fact they didn't get it from you, and they didn't get it from anyone else. I am guaranteeing you that there are holdbacks in this particular case. I would love to be a fly on the wall and find out what these holdbacks are.
And you know what? I want to address this real quick too, BZ. Here, you and I, we keep throwing stuff out even more bizarre in this case.
Yep.
So here's the next question: who the hell is leaking the photos of the crime scene to the media? Because that's even the next mystery.
That pissed off the sheriff big time.
We have had the photos of the crime scene leaked. We've had the photos of the perpetrator himself with his face half blown off. I think everybody's probably seen those by now.
No, actually, I have not. I didn't know they were out there.
Yeah, they are out there. You go to one of your favorite places. The Daily Mails have them. I have not published them. I did not feel that it was right to publish them because I'm not in the clickbait business. I'm in the news business. Right. So I figured out, okay, I'm not interested in the crime scene photos. From a historical aspect, yes. I'm more interested in, once again, we're seeking why this happened, the motivation. Now, as far as those photos being leaked, I want to know why they were leaked and who leaked them. I want to know why. Why were those leaked? Obviously, in a lot of cases when they're leaked, it's because somebody's got an inside informant that they're passing some cash to. Okay, somebody inside the police department is on the payroll of somebody in the media that can get information from them, and so they leak that type of stuff out, whether it's information, photos, or something. But there, once again, as strange as this case goes, and as bizarre as it continues to be, is there some other reason why these photos were leaked? Because normally that type of stuff should not be leaked out. That should be released by the police in a press release, in a press conference, something like that. Usually they're going to release photos if they think it's going to give them some information, lead to something. Somebody's going to see something in the photo. It's going to kick their brain in and say, hey, I need to call the police because this is going to be a game changer in this investigation. Looking at those photos, they're just showing the positions of the weapons, the position of the body where they found it, of the bullet holes in the door you were talking about, from the security guard that was shot at. The police were shot at as well before he took his own life.
Yes.
So some of that stuff. So why were these leaked? We don't know yet. Who leaked them? We'll know who leaked them pretty quick, and probably who leaked them is going to find themselves in the unemployment line and probably be put, be asked a few questions along the lines. Hey, what's your association with this? So, and different things like that.
As well they should. Folks, it's time for us to wrap up. You've been listening to the Sack Heads Radio Show with BZ and Dan Butcher. Dan, you were on the show for another full 2 damn hours, and thank you ever so kindly, particularly in light of the fact that everything fucked up yesterday so wonderfully royally, and today, thank God, things are working. So, Dan, thank you very much. Folks, thank you very much for listening. Come back tomorrow night and trust me when I tell you that BZ on the Berserk Bobcat Saloon is going to go into this shite and another thing in great, great detail. So again, thanks to Dan. Thanks to everyone for listening. And now we're going to head out into the proverbial Sackhead sunset, I think. Right?
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sack Heads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best conservative talk than Sackhead John and Sackhead Clan. We're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to
Saka, where are you? We want our paperwork.
For those who are tuning in around the world to the best late-night conservative talk, Sack Heads Radio.
Heart tube. Heart tube.
Radio.
Heart tube. Heart tube.
Radio.
Sack.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America.
Good night, everybody.
In America.
In America.
And in the web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.